Welcome to Courageous Conversation with Theresa W. Gamble, powered by Concierge Resource Professional Consultant. Courageous Conversation is a diversity, equality, exclusive initiative. It's a gracious space for a meaningful discussion about culture, life, business, work, learn, live, worship, and play.
Greetings. This is your host, Theresa W. Gamble of Courageous Conversations. We're continuing the series about the 9 types of trauma and the culture of trauma. And this is a continuation of my doctoral candidate assignment in my class in my degree for trauma-informed educational practices and specialization of social emotional learning. And this particular topic, we're going to focus on and identify factors that relate to trauma from poverty. And we're going to go into a brief case study of something I know very well that would align with this particular topic. The trauma of poverty is not new to black and brown community members. African Americans were taken from the continent of Africa by Europeans who sought to create a civilization of colonies from Europe to what we know as North America or the United States, where the land was occupied by native indigenous people who were also enslaved by the Europeans, according to Margaret Newell 2015's Brother by Nature, New England Indians, Colonists, and the Origin of American Slavery. I know currently a lot of people don't want to talk about slavery and because it's a negative impact and it will hurt people's feelings, but we cannot hide and erase or whitewash history because the ancestors of many Europeans and white privileged individuals, their ancestors, their grandparents and great grandparents, they started this when they left their European country to create a new civilization and using free labor of African Americans and Native American indigenous people to create this country. Why? Because they lacked the skill sets to grow food and to hunt, to be able to survive in a land and a population to them that was desolate. So, according to Margaret Newell in her article, she addresses these issues how slavery was pivotal and a part of contributing to our country, as well as the 1619 project that was written by the publicized author. I can't think of her name at this moment, but she is well renowned and now a professor at Howard University. So, today, about the factors that impact trauma is socioeconomic. Everything with traumatic experience is tied to socioeconomic traumas. With African American, brown, indigenous, Native American people, as well as poor white people, if they're not making a livable wage, they're expect to give and provide free labor to keep the country going for us to be able to eat, for us to be able to sustain sustenance, to be able to have livable wages, to have shelter, to have clothes, to have adequate transportation. There is someone that is working to keep and maintain these things possible. And when the individuals are not paid what they're worth and not what they deserve, it creates the trauma of poverty, where a family has to choose whether or not to pay rent or buy groceries. There are so many communities in our country are have food deserts. Yes, there are food deserts in the United States, and that is why so many children go hungry because the parents has to make a choice either between food or their health care. It's one or the other. It's not both because the livable wage is not enough to maintain both. So, in my case study, I'm going to talk to you about a young man by the name of Leo who is 56 years old now. He's an African American male. He grew up in a single mother home with 6 siblings that was very abusive, very toxic, very unpleasant, and created a boatloads of traumatic experiences that was long term. Nothing was short term for him, to the point that he had to run away from home, be alone, learn how to hunt on his own in the woods to be able to eat, learn how to make money for himself by picking pecans, picking fruit, and then learning how to grow plants and vegetations and sell them to get money to be able to buy food for himself, buy clothes for school, buy shoes, and to the point so where he can be able to participate in activities in school where his single mother lacked or did not have any interest to do. She did not attend any PTA meetings, any parent teacher conferences. She did not check to see on his learning disability that he later learned with the individual education plan, where teachers penalize him because of the lack of participation by his mother by putting him back a grade. That is a traumatic experience of its own. And in this climate, this school climate, some of his teachers was very discriminatory. They were very racist toward him, being an African American male. But Leo was very talented. He was very artistic. He loved music. He loved to draw. He loved sports. He was very athletic, and those things that his teachers did not pick up on to galvanize and strengthen his academic performance. Leo had to go in survival mode and do it for himself. After he was retained from the sixth grade and the lack of the participation of his mother, he had to take the responsibility of making sure he earned the adequate credit to make sure he get out of the special education program to get in traditional classes, because Leo wanted a traditional diploma. He didn't want a special needs or special education diploma. His mother was not involved in the process because she didn't come to the meetings. She didn't speak to the guidance counselor. She Her focus was working and keeping a roof on her head, but Leo discovered that she had a gambling habit. She loved to play the dog track. So it questioned where the funds was going. Maybe to help supplement the income she had, but it wasn't a guarantee it would get supplemented by her going to the dog track. So as Leo grew up and he saw these things and living in a working middle class community in the southern part of the United States, transitioning from South Carolina rural sharecropper area where for the Confederates that his mother grew in, into a community that was still segregated and still practiced slavery, but they did it in a way by paying low wages and keeping in blue collar jobs such as janitorial and cooking. So in this setting for Leo, he saw how his mom worked all the time, and if when there wasn't enough money, him and his siblings had to be divided between family members and friends to the area she relocated to, because there was impossible for them to remain under one roof because there wasn't enough income. And the father he knew growing up left at 2 years old did not provide enough child support for them to sustain the livelihood of the home they moved into from South Carolina. So with all these dynamics and traumatic events going on that Leo had to endure with, by the time he reached middle school, Leo became more crafty and more self-sufficient to be able to earn his money on his own, hiding it from his siblings, hiding it from his mom because he wasn't old enough to have a bank account, burying it in the yard to be able to have money if he wanted to buy something to eat or buy something for himself. But because the mother stayed gambling at the dog track and she knew that he was working and selling things, because his siblings was either watching him or telling on him or the neighbors was telling on him, she would seize all the money he have saved and earned to be able to get out of the poverty, the trauma of poverty, and to have his mother to keep him in it. So in doing so, Leo took the responsibility to make sure that he got the traditional diploma, that he was able to graduate on time and be able to sustain a better livelihood and earn the money. But instead, she manipulated and she used him as if Leo, was her husband to help pay the bills. She would take his paychecks and be able to leave him with a few dollars, and she would take the rest. And the rest of the siblings who were old enough to work he was not paying and contributing to their part. So Leo continued to work and continued to develop his independence in getting self-sustaining by buying his own transportation, where he had to stop riding bicycles or either walking to get to his destination, even though his single mom had transportation, but she wouldn't take him to and fro. So you have to look at the trauma of poverty as just more than just food. It's socio-economic, it's emotional, it's physical, it's very traumatic for Leo as he grew up, and not having a male role model in his life or any other resources to reach out to get help, because he was physically punished for that, because of the whippings and the from the mom and from the siblings if he spoke out or if he said anything against her that would draw attention to her from authorities with child protective services or the Department of Children and Family. So Leo had a choice. He either become self-sufficient, get all the things necessary for him to move out and have his own independence. And Leo ended up doing that in silence. And when the time came for him to transition and leave and even to get married, it was opposition against his mom. So this is a long-term generational traumatic experience for Leo, that he have experienced post-traumatic stress syndrome before it was even diagnosed. And this is why it's important. Educators have to pay attention. Don't ignore the red flag signs. Try to get help even if the student don't ask for it. But there are ways you have collateral connections to get the help necessary for children who are experiencing poverty in a traumatic way, to make sure they have the nutrition they need and the holistic wraparound services for them to be a successful student and a productive individual in society. Thank you so much for listening. This is Theresa W. Gamble, keeping the conversation going about the culture of trauma, the 9 types of traumas that we endure and it's unspoken and we don't talk about. See you next time.
You've been listening to Courageous Conversation with Theresa W. Gamble. Courageous Conversation is powered by Carcier Resource Professional Consultant.